now time to look at what the papers are saying on their front pages. And we'll have Dr. Constance Ikogu here. Good morning to you, Constance.
Good morning, Ndi. Very good morning to you, Adesua and Nkechi.
Good morning, Doctor.
Great to be here. So to look at the papers with us this morning, we have Chuks Akunna. He is the Executive Director of Authority newspaper. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper.
Good morning.
In this day, Tinubu, Israel must end Gaza aggression, seeks two-state solution at Riyadh summit. Article, I can't envy president inflicting pain on Nigerians is exclusively wicked. NNPC ends petroleum product import, ramps up patronage of Dangote Refinery. Illegal mining in Kebbi concerns mount over collusion by security operatives and Chinese nationals. 29 years after Tinubu to honor Sarawiwa, late Ken Sarawiwa and 8 others who were sentenced to death by the Abacha government will be remembered, the government says. The president said his government wants to address historical grievances, foster healing among all ethnic groups, and forge a united country. I mean, with regard to historical grievances and injustices in this country, there are many, and we continue to see that up till today, haven't we, Chuks?
Yes, exactly. It's very, very heartwarming that if you examine what President Tinubu said, to begin with, it's 29 years since Sarawiwa and 8 other Ogoni activists were killed were assassinated executed by the Abacha regime. So for President Tinubu, 29 years after, to talk about healing the injustice of the past, it's not just about Mossop. It's not just about Mossop. We have a lot of ethnic cleavages that are agitating for self-determination. We have the IPOB, we have the Yoruba Nation, we have Arewa that are clamoring for reforms. So it's good that President Tinubu, it's talking about correcting the injustices, righting the wrongs of the past, because no nation thrives on injustice. And it takes a lot of courage for President Tinubu to recognize the Ogoni 9, because we all know what happened. The colonial interests. We know that several Western companies were behind that move to actually execute the Ogoni 9. So it's a good one. The healing process begins from now. Better late they say than never.
When the president says he wants to correct injustices, which we see up till today, a lot of people have taken him to task regarding the way he has handled his appointments currently that is tilted to his ethnic group. When you look at that, isn't that also an issue? If you really want to make sure that Nigeria is run based on fairness, equity, and justice, these things matter, don't they, Ndi?
Well, you're raising another issue from this particular one, which Afeni Ferre also talked about. They said we fought the former president on this question of non-inclusion and, ethnicity in appointments and all that. And we can't stand by and watch you, a Yoruba man, the president they were talking about, start replicating the same thing, according to them, which they accused the past President Buhari of doing. It does speak volumes, the way our appointments are done here in Nigeria. Instead of merit, you talk about favoritism and then where you come from. But back to the Ogoni stuff, closure, very important, to make the people welcomed or belong. That makes sense, because what they were fighting for, the Ogoni 9, was simply the fact that their livelihood, their land was being destroyed by foreign companies who were exploring oil. So calling that back, it does make sense. It will give the people of that region, Niger Delta, a sense of belonging, and that the president is doing what is right.
And then, of course, the bigger discussion about diversity and how to embrace it. There's no government that will succeed in this country if it doesn't embrace every part of the country in how it governs, making sure that there's no policy of exclusion, Nkechi.
Yes, that's actually very important when it comes to, especially in a country where we're so diverse. Inclusion really matters. And it speaks volumes, what Indy has said, when Refinery comes out to say, yes, we are from the same area. However, we cannot stand by and watch the same thing that happened in the past administration that we were speaking against happen right now. So no matter how something is done, something that's not right is done repeatedly, doesn't make it right. So yes, that's a very important point you have, Doctor.
The Guardian this morning, healthcare on life support as hospitals buckle under power crisis. Then hospitals spend over 60 million monthly on diesel transfer costs to patients, as a result of that. Coalition decries new terror group Shekarov flays intelligence failure. Marketers Dangote settle a rift on fuel lifting as NNPCL claims non-indebtedness. TED Fund cuts raise fears of tuition hikes despite student loan relief. And then again, the story on Tinubu and Riyadh. Tinubu seeks end to Gaza war, supports two-state solution. Unsold goods hit 1.24 trillion naira, up by over 350% in 6 months. The current economic situation is hitting the manufacturing sector. As we can see from those figures, this information is coming from the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, which has called for government intervention to stimulate consumption. I mean, unfortunately, there are formidable challenges that we have here, and this is going to stay with us for a while, Chuks, isn't it?
Yes. On a personal note, my wife and I visited a supermarket a few days ago, and we ended up spending about 100,000 naira. And guess what? All we bought, fitted into 2 plastic bags, and that was worth 100,000 naira. And these were just beverages and what have you. Nothing spectacular. I mean, no drugs and stuff. It's a very, very difficult situation for most Nigerians. Our purchasing power has dropped, and that's why MAN is crying that when they produce goods, a lot of those goods are not bought by Nigerians. They're unsold. I know that several goods have expiry dates. But when I read the story, I also read about how small business owners are complaining about the lifting of import restrictions. So it implies that several cheap goods from all over the world are flooding Nigeria. And it's a very, very big problem. We spoke about the healthcare sector. We all know how much diesel costs now for those who can afford diesel. And we need, if you want to talk about green energy, you want to talk about solar power, it's also very, very expensive given that most of the components are not, very few of the components are made in, if any, are made in Nigeria. So it's a very, very tough one for Nigerians. Manufacturers are growing, consumers also, lack that purchasing power.
Now, let me bring you in. The issues are very clear, whether it's cost of providing alternative energy, high interest rate, the increase in cost of borrowing. Because of that, so the burden is passed on to consumers. Mm-hmm. There's a foreign exchange scarcity, and there's just a whole lot going on at the same time.
Indeed, the usual suspects are, as we have listed, and the guest commentator, Chuks, also mentioned. It's really disturbing situation indeed, but having to read that the lifting of ban on imported goods is also costing this is troubling, because what that does is that it diminishes the ability of the Nigerian producers to compete competitively, really. But I also wanted to tie this to the Dangote and Ipman story, because it's such a relief and a breath of fresh air to see that all this back and forth is over for now, at least. Ipman says they will lift the product directly, there'll be no middleman, and they are promising that it will be affordable and available. So if you look at all of this, including the issues you have listed, the crux of the matter, when you see inflation going up across the country, across the world, including Nigeria, A major factor is usually energy, the cost of energy, energy in production, because you cannot produce without having energy power. So if we have cheaper, affordable petrol, perhaps some of these businesses can have a relief. And I don't know why we have demonized subsidies so much. There are analysts and experts who have said repeatedly, the countries like China are able to compete with the likes of the US, Canada, because they are giving subsidies to businesses. So if we take away subsidy from petrol and we say it's not coming back, that's fine. But can we give subsidy to other major sectors of the economy so that this trickles down to the people and they can actually breathe, like the president promised, beyond the poor people? I think everybody's choked at this point, and we need some relief.
Well, that's why you're already congratulating them. Just to add, caution. We'll have to wait and see whether what they're saying will manifest.
That's what I said for now. At least that's what they've said for now.
Whether we will congratulate, because so many times promises have been made. And before you come in, Constance, the question of security, social implications of people going out of job because companies are no longer producing or selling is a whole, you know, a package, if you like.
Right. Consequences are many. Well, we're all here watching what goes on. Daily Trust, Ondo governorship politicians woo voters with cash food. We talked about it the other day. Inducement has become the order of the day instead of trying to explain to people what they're actually going to do when they grasp power. Manufacturers spend 238.3 billion naira on alternative energy. And then Tinubu, Prince Salman, others demand end to Israel's aggression in Gaza. The president called for a two-state solution. President Tinubu was attending the extraordinary Arab-Islamic Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He warned that this conflict has persisted for long. The summit was attended by heads of state and government of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the League of Arab States. I mean, interesting, President Tinubu in Riyadh. The president is right when he says the conflict needs to come to a close. At the same time, there is a sense that the president has a lot on his plate back home where that require attention. I mean, we have a new terror group, the La Kurawa, right? That is out now. So, I mean, Chuks, how do you see this?
Yes, we have President Tinubu has a lot on his plate. Yes, no doubt about that. But then, the conflict in the Middle East is also part of the problem because talking about rising energy prices, you know, the crisis in the Middle East, no doubt, is affected. And it's good that at least Nigeria has taken a stand on that. You know, nobody, each day you tune on your television set, you know, to happens in the Middle East, particularly in Gaza. You know, it's very heart-wrenching. I have a lot of Lebanese nationals who live in Nigeria. Some of them are married to Nigerians. And you know the crisis in Lebanon, it's also affected Nigeria, whether we like it or not. So the two-state solution has been proffered not just by Nigeria but several world leaders, including former U.S. presidents. So the earlier this aggression, what they call aggression, they call invasion, call anything comes to an end, the better for us all, because we don't like what's happening in the Middle East.
Do you see this rapprochement geopolitically between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia? You know, there are talks that the president is warming up to Prince Salman because he needs access to the Americans. You know, there's a change of government. Trump is there. You know, he's very different in his approach to Africa. What's your sense generally?
Well, the point is that in the international sphere, you have to. Someone said, too many friends, is it 1,000 friends too little? One enemy too much. So whatever you can do, for as long as your interest is protected, for as long as you know what you're doing, even back home, so you can have what you call competitiveness, you know, it's all right if he gets into talks with Saudi Arabia, you know, and then, of course, the issues that have to do with Trump. And like the president said, just to add a little on that, this war has just gone on too long. Lives wasted. Who did know jack about the war? Children, women. The whole world should come together and really end this war in Gaza.
Right. Daily Sun, edict established in Nigeria expired 10 years ago, says Ango Abdullahi, NEF chair. The talk is about the amalgamation decree of 1914, which brought Nigeria together as one country. It was meant to expire in 100 days, which is now overdue. And, you know, the talk is also that the next logical step will be for Nigerians to discuss and renegotiate their existence and partnership. I mean, it's interesting that this is coming from the convener of the Northern Elders Forum, Ango Abdullahi. It's not a new idea, though. There's one Tony Nadi of the Movement for a New Nigeria who has been on about this for quite a while. So now that it's coming from Professor Ango Abdullahi, I think it's getting more attention. Why now? What do you think about these jokes?
Yes, it's very distressing that Professor Ango Abdullahi, 76-year-old professor, has become very vocal in his call for the disintegration of Nigeria. You know, Ango Abdullahi is one of those persons who enjoyed the best of Nigeria. You know, lately, maybe due to old age or some other factors, Professor Abdullahi, you know, over the past 10 years, he's been very, very vehement in the calls for the dissolution of Nigeria. You know, he talks about, and then if you look at it, okay, the edict expired in 2014, according to Professor Ango Abdullahi. So that's 10 years now. So what have we been doing since 10 years? So that means Nigeria has been existing illegally over the past 10 years. I wonder what Professor Abdullahi and his likes want us to do as Nigerians. I thought that, you know, when people become older, they become very measured in their comments. They become uniting factor, not divisive factor, as Professor Abdullah is doing.
Well, Chooks, it's deeper than that, because this conversation is not, you've been talking about the structure of Nigeria. There have been calls for national conference. We've had some of it during Jonathan's, you know, but at each point, it looks like there's always disagreement between the South and the North on how to move forward on this. You know, like the 2015 National Conference, the North didn't want anything to do with it, or, you know, they had issues with some parts of it. So it's an ongoing conversation. I think the main thing is that there's lack of sincerity. And it looks like at every point, when it does not suit people, then they start talking. And Kechi, do you get, you know?
I mean, I think you can already sort of guess where I stand with this. Nigeria's, should I say, systemic failures is less about the structure, I think. More about the operators, right? You have corruption, lack of accountability, the public largely disengaged from governance. It's not problems of like parliamentary system can magically fix. It's like switching systems. You're just swapping. If you're in the Titanic and you just think, let me swap a chair, it might save you some time, but it's not going to steer the Titanic clear from that iceberg. So that's where I stand with these calls.
What? The international headlines this morning, I will go to Daily Graphic. 4 MPs vacant seat controversy. Supreme Court delivers judgment today. Standoff in Parliament. Solution rests with Speaker. According to Afenyo Martin. Afenyo Martin is the majority leader of the House, and it says it was the Speaker's declaration of 4 seats vacant that caused the chaos in the chamber. According to him, the Speaker bears ultimate responsibility to bring peace to the House. Well, at this one, you know, the majority leader has a point here. At the same time, this case is now in court, so they will have to wait for the court to make a declaration or a decision on what it should be.
Indeed, not just any court, but the Supreme Court, and it will be heard today. It was stalled yesterday because the counsel to the Speaker did not show up and did not send notes either. So today, hopefully, that case will be heard. The Supreme Court, as we know, is also the apex court in Ghana. So they're testing the law to see the constitutional powers of the Speaker. What the Speaker did was to unilaterally declare the seats of these 4 MPs vacant. And they're questioning what authority he has to do that. So if the court should decide, and would decide today, hopefully, then Ghana can have this law tested and say, to what extent can an individual be powerful, albeit a speaker of the country? And it's something we should also look out to critically here in Nigeria, where you have state houses of assembly where 4 or 3 supersedes the majority number and can continue ruling as the state house of assembly. And has happened across board. Currently, we're having a situation in Rivers State where you're having 2 parallel state house of assembly running, and nobody seems to be able to find a solution to all of this. Ghana will be a litmus test. Today there will be a litmus test by the Supreme Court in Ghana for this situation.
Yeah,
perhaps
but
we can learn from that.
Right, but we also know that the issue was that they defected from their party. So
yeah, and the speaker
yes, yeah.
and the speaker said, according to the constitution, they should not have done that. You know.
Right.
But we'll see what the Supreme Court.
Exactly. The Citizen newspaper, DA, the most racist party. A row has ensued between the DA and the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. DA expressed concern over the appointment of Tebogo Nkoku, who they say often refers to white people as colonialists and settlers. Then Park says, you know, that this is a pot calling kettle black, you know, referring to DA, because according to it, DA has its own shortcomings, and this the party tries to perpetuate a liberal agenda to alienate and marginalize the very people that it represents. I mean, it's an uneasy political space here. It's difficult to see how a Pan-Africanist movement and the DA will agree on the majority of issues or chooks.
Yes, in South Africa Democratic Alliance, it shows, what does it show? It goes to show the weak underbelly of the country called the Republic of South Africa. You know, several, since 1994, when South Africa gained independence, talking about how many years, how many decades, and people are still talking about issues of racism, you know, calling the Democratic Alliance the most racist party ever. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting because, you know, when South Africa gained independence, a lot of people thought that it was going to be El Dorado, that the streets of Pretoria, Cape Town, Durban, and the rest would be literally paved in gold. But, you know, several decades after independence, you know, black majority South Africans are coming to the sad reality that, you know, the grass is always green from afar. You know, the issues that dogged them while in the era of apartheid are still there: unemployment, high crime rates, particularly in black-dominated suburbs of South Africa. So it's very, very, very interesting. It's a very, very interesting issue. You know, we don't have that. What we have in Nigeria is the issue of ethnicity. But then, because South Africa is called the Rainbow Nation, you have several races in South Africa. So that's why the issue of racism is being propped up.
Express. Can we really trust the Church of England to keep us safe? I think the answer at the moment is no, says this headline. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, is under fire for failure to bring to book a serial abuser who is accused of abusing as many as 130 boys and young men. This occurred in summer camps in the 70s and 80s, and this same man also is accused of abusing people in Zimbabwe, where he was relocated to. John Smith is his name. This scandal is, you know, shaking the Church of England, and I don't see how Welby gets out of this quickly.
Well, who do you trust for security? It is the people who keep the law and order, not the church. I mean, that's one. But the point they're making is that the Archbishop knew about this and then should have reported this matter to the people who keep the law, who we should trust for safety. And so that's why the hue and cry about what is happening.
But it's the culture of cover-up within institutions, and particularly in this case, the church. The Catholic Church is not new to scandals like this. And to your question...
No, that's the Anglican Church.
The Anglican Church, beg your pardon. And to your question whether Welby will survive this, the calls for him to go are coming from within the church, not even from outside. So most likely, Welby, who's to retire in, I think, about a year from now, by the statutes, at the age of 70, might be stepping down earlier than that. And like you said, because this was so covered up and not reported to the police, this guy went ahead to another country where he committed the same crimes. And for me, this is double jeopardy.
Right.
When victims suffer the crime in the first instance and then they don't get justice in the second instance.
Okay, we almost run out of time, but quickly, Financial Times, EU countries to spend billions more on defense as Trump raises a hit on them. Nkechi, last word, and then we go.
I mean, the European Union plotting to sort of repurpose its cohesion funds meant to reduce that inequality across member states is not something that is new to us. In the wake of this election, and when the world started seeing that, look, Donald Trump is going to win, this was already on the table, even before, as soon as he even won the primaries. And then you have sort of this dual pressures of Russian aggression in Ukraine, Trump's return, jolting this whole European movement as well. It's not something that's new. It's not something that's surprising, really,
Right.
on the headline, front page of Financial Times.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have for paper review this morning.
All right,
Thank
thank you. Go on.
Okay. Thank you, Constance Ikoku, Arise News analyst, for reviewing the papers with us this morning, and Chooks, our guest commentator for the day this lovely Tuesday morning. I'm Adeso Amoran. That's all the time we have on Daybreak. The morning show is up next. Good morning.
Thank you for watching. I am Ndi Amoko.
And I am Nkechi Nana.